Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's Roswell, and the cover-up that followed. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On December 26, 1980, U.S. Air Force personnel stationed at RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England, followed strange lights into Rendlesham Forest at around 3 a.m. What they found, or what they reported finding, has been debated for 4 decades. Sergeant Jim Penniston said he approached a landed craft and touched its surface. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, the deputy base commander, led a second investigation the following night, carrying a Geiger counter and a cassette recorder. He recorded his observations in real time. The tape survives. Multiple witnesses, eventually more than 80 military personnel, reported lights, a landed object, equipment failures, and physical ground traces over 3 consecutive nights. Holt filed a formal memo to the British Ministry of Defence. The British government investigated and concluded nothing of defence significance had occurred. The witnesses disagreed. Holt has never changed his account in 44 years. Penniston published his sketches from the night of the encounter, made at the scene, showing a structured craft with symbols on its surface. The British Ministry of Defence files, released under Freedom of Information between 2009 and 2011, showed more internal concern than the official public position suggested. The incident remains unexplained to most of the people who were there. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Governments keep secrets. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented fact, confirmed by declassified archives, freedom of information disclosures, and the confessions of officials long after the events in question. The United States government ran secret programs to test psychedelic drugs on unwitting civilians, MKUltra, to spy on its own citizens, COINTELPRO, and to cover up nuclear testing incidents that killed American soldiers. The British government suppressed information about UFO encounters by military personnel for decades. The Soviet Union systematically falsified scientific data to maintain ideological conformity. None of this means that every government secret involves supernatural phenomena or alien contact. The reality of classified programs is almost always more mundane. Military technology being tested covertly, intelligence operations that cannot be publicly acknowledged, or simply the bureaucratic instinct to classify first and justify later. Most UFO sightings that turn out to have official explanations were classified aircraft. Most government denials of anomalous phenomena are straightforwardly honest. The phenomena being denied are simply not real. But the documented history of government secrecy has a practical effect on investigative credibility. When officials deny knowledge of events that witnesses describe in compelling detail, that denial cannot be taken at face value without independent corroboration. The proven track record of institutional concealment means that institutional denial, however authoritative it sounds, is not the same as evidence of absence. This complicates every modern mystery that touches on official narrative. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's Roswell, and the cover-up that followed is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. RAF Woodbridge and the adjacent RAF Bentwaters constituted a NATO base housing U.S. Air Force personnel during the Cold War. The incidents occurred over 3 nights, December 26, 27, and 28, 1980. Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman John Burroughs were among the first responders on the night of December 26. Peniston reported approaching a landed triangular craft approximately 3 meters wide and 2 meters tall, observing symbols on its surface and making written sketches in his notebook during the encounter. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, the deputy base commander, led a second investigation on the night of December 27-28 with a team including a Geiger counter. He recorded his observations on a cassette recorder throughout the investigation. The tape captures Holt describing lights in the forest, radiation readings above background levels in the landing area, and an object he describes as elliptical and sending beams of light toward the ground. The recording is considered the most significant piece of primary evidence from the incident. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Holt filed a formal memo to the British Ministry of Defence on January 13, 1981, subject line, "Unexplained lights." The memo described the landing, the ground traces, the radiation readings, and the lights observed by multiple personnel. The memo was declassified and released to the public in 1983. It is a straightforward military report written by a senior officer describing events he personally witnessed, and it has never been retracted or amended by Holt. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, physical evidence collected at the landing site included 3 depressions approximately 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter in a triangular pattern, consistent with landing marks. Radiation readings taken by Holt's team at the depression sites were measured at above background levels using an /PDR-27 Geiger counter. The readings were recorded on Holt's audio tape in real time. Photographs were taken of the ground impressions. The British Defence Intelligence Staff assessed the report, but released no detailed findings. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Nick Pope, who managed the British Ministry of Defence's UFO desk from 1991 to 1994, has stated publicly that the Rendlesham incident is the most compelling case he encountered during his tenure. He describes the combination of multiple senior military witnesses, real-time audio recording, physical ground trace evidence, and the formal memo as making the case uniquely well documented compared to most UFO reports. He regards the official conclusion that nothing of defense significance occurred as inadequate given the evidence. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. UK Ministry of Defence files released between 2009 and 2011 under Freedom of Information showed that internal assessments of the Rendlesham incident were more detailed and concerned than the public position indicated. Files showed ongoing interest in the case well after the official dismissal. Jim Penniston stated in 2010 that during his physical contact with the craft, he received a binary code transmission in his mind, which he had written in his notebook at the time, and which was published in 2010 as a message with geographic coordinates. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's Roswell, and the cover-up that followed. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Holt's own conclusion, maintained consistently for over 4 decades, is that a genuinely unidentified craft of non-human origin was observed and physically traced by US military personnel at Rendlesham Forest. He argues that the combination of his audio recording, Penniston's contemporaneous sketches, the ground traces, radiation readings, and more than 80 witnesses makes the extraterrestrial hypothesis more parsimonious than any prosaic explanation yet offered. He has formally requested that the US and UK governments declassify all files related to the incident. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that astronomer Ian Ridpath proposed that witnesses on the first night confused the rotating beam of Orfordness Lighthouse, visible through the trees from the forest, with a landed craft, and that a bright meteor over South's England the same night was misidentified as a crashing object. He has mapped the lighthouse beam's visibility from the reported positions and argues it accounts for all observed light phenomena. Primary witnesses, including Holt, have consistently rejected this explanation, stating they were aware of the lighthouse and that what they observed was entirely different. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Nick Redfern and other researchers have proposed that the Rendlesham incident involved a classified military holographic projection test, either British or American, designed to study the psychological and operational response of military personnel to apparent supernatural phenomena. No documentary evidence for such a program has emerged, though both the US and UK governments conducted psychological warfare research programs during this period. Holt has stated he considers this explanation as implausible as the lighthouse theory, given what he personally observed. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's Roswell, and the cover-up that followed does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes Holt's cassette recording made during the investigation on the night of December 27-28, 1980, is the primary piece of direct evidence from the incident. It is unedited, made in real time in field conditions, and captures Holt describing anomalous light phenomena above background radiation readings at the landing site and a structured aerial object directing beams of light toward the ground. The tape has been analyzed by multiple parties, and no evidence of editing or fabrication has been identified. It was released publicly in the 1990s. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Peniston's notebook containing sketches of the craft and its surface symbols made at the scene on the night of December 26, 1980, has been examined by researchers and published in his 2010 book, The Rendlesham Enigma. The notebook's physical condition and ink dating are consistent with its claimed provenance. The sketches show a structured craft with geometric symbols that Peniston described seeing during his physical approach. Burroughs, who was present, corroborates that Peniston made notes at the scene, though Burroughs' own memory of the encounter is fragmented. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Ministry of Defense files released under Freedom of Information between 2009 and 2011 confirmed that the Rendlesham incident received more sustained internal attention than the public dismissal implied. Files show the Defense Intelligence staff assessed Holt's memo and requested further information. The MOD's official position that the incident had no defense significance is contradicted by the volume of internal correspondence the released files reveal. No classified explanation has been formally published by either the British or American government. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion: that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's Roswell, and the cover-up that followed. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries: why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Holt's cassette recording and Peniston's notebook remain publicly available and have been analyzed by researchers, journalists, and documentary makers for 4 decades. The UK Ministry of Defence released its complete Rendlesham file collection between 2009 and 2011 under Freedom of Information. Nick Pope maintains the incident is the most evidentially robust unresolved UFO case in British history. RAF Woodbridge closed in 1993 after the Cold War. Suffolk Tourism actively promotes Rendlesham Forest as the site of the UK's most famous UFO incident, with a trail marker at the reported landing site. No explanation accepted by all primary witnesses has been publicly established. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis. And the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's Roswell, and the cover-up that followed, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Rendlesham Forest ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.